This story is called My Fiancée Broke Up With Me After Her Sister Convinced Her I Wasn't in Her League. She later regretted it and showed up at my door begging. Hey everyone, before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Some people know my main, and this whole thing is still quite new. I'm also typing this on my phone at 3 a.m. I'm sorry if the formatting is bad. I can't sleep. I guess I should start by telling you a little bit about myself, since that's important to how this whole thing went down. I'm a 29-year-old man who grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in what you would call a typical middle-class family. My dad owned a small but successful plumbing business that he built from scratch. He literally started with just him and a van, and now he has 15 employees. My mom was an amazing elementary school teacher who everyone in our neighborhood knew and loved. They weren't rich or anything, but they taught me that honest work and smart money management were the keys to a good life. Maybe that's why I became a financial advisor. I know, not the most exciting job. When I tell people what I do at parties, their eyes usually glaze over faster than a Dunkin' Donut, but honestly, I love my job. There's something really satisfying about helping regular people manage their money. People come to me for help with their money and planning for the future, and the pay is pretty good, especially since I became a partner at my firm last year. Anyway, back in the summer of 2018, my friend Mike had a huge barbecue at his new house. You know, the kind where the grills are going all day and the coolers are full of craft beer because we're adults now, lol. Someone always brings a guitar, even though no one asked for one. I almost didn't go because I had a lot of client reports to finish, but Mike literally threatened to drag me there if I tried to leave. Met Sarah. Holy Arthur. Guys, you ever have one of those moments where you see someone across the room and everything else just kind of fades away? That's what happened when I spotted this gorgeous redhead laughing at something by the fire pit. She had these incredible green eyes and was wearing this simple sundress, but somehow managed to outshine everyone else there. Turns out Sarah worked in marketing for this tech startup downtown. She was smart as hell, could talk about literally anything, and had this weird obsession with true crime podcasts that I thought were strange but lovable. We talked till about 3 a.m. That night we just sat on Mike's back porch while everyone else either left or passed out. Things moved pretty quickly after that. We moved in together after a year because we were already spending every night at each other's places anyway, so it made sense financially. Once a financial advisor, always a financial advisor. LMAO. I proposed last summer during a trip to Traverse City. We did the whole romantic beach sunset thing. She cried, I cried, and random strangers. The beach was perfect. Our life together was everything I had ever wanted. We had this great routine. I would get up early to make breakfast. I learned how to make these crazy French toast that Sarah swore was better than her mom's, and her mom agreed. We would have coffee together and talk about our plans for the day, and then we would go to work. Evenings were for cooking dinner together while dancing to 80s music. She got me hooked on Tears for Fears, or binge-watching whatever new show we had found. Weekends were the best, though. We sometimes take short road trips to random small towns in Michigan to try out local restaurants and see strange tourist attractions. We found this great pie shop in the middle of nowhere that we drive an hour to visit. Other weekends, we just stay home and do some gardening. I got really into growing vegetables during or we have friends over for game nights. We were the kind of couple that other people would look at and think relationship goals, you know, the kind that still enjoy spending time together. And don't just post about it on social media. We had our arguments, sure, but they were always about stupid stuff like whose turn it was to clean the bathroom or whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It absolutely does. Fight me. We had all these plans for the future too, already picked out wedding venues, started looking at houses in this cute neighborhood near my office, even talked about kids' names, though we agreed to wait a few years on that. Sarah had this whole Pinterest board full of ideas for our dream home. She wanted one of those fancy kitchen. I was saving up to make it all happen. Islands and a reading nook by a bay window. Looking back, I guess things were too perfect. You know how they say that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Well, that applies to relationships too. Just when I thought I had everything figured out and all the pieces of my life were finally falling into place, Sarah's sister Pei decided to pay us a surprise visit. You know those people who make being an influencer their whole life? That's Polly, but times that by 1,000 and add a big dose of superiority complex. While Sarah and I were building our life in Michigan, living in our cozy apartment with our rescue cat Mr. Whiskers. Yeah, basic name but he came with it. Polly was living what she called her best life in Miami. By best life, I mean posting daily Instagram stories about her entrepreneur grind while actually living off their parents' money. No shade to people who get help from their parents, but at least be honest about it. Polly was 32 but acted like she was always 21. Her Instagram bio literally said, CEO of Living Life with a spark emoji. She sold these ridiculously overpriced workout plans online for $299 for a PDF of basic exercises you could find on YouTube for free. But somehow she had like 50,000 followers who ate up everything she posted. Her content was all boss babe this and create your own reality, that pure toxic positivity. Money, no shade to people who get help from their parents, but at least be honest about it. Polly was 32 but acted like she was always 21. Her Instagram bio literally said, CEO of Living Life with the spark emoji. She sold these ridiculously overpriced workout plans online for $299 for a PDF of basic exercises you could find on YouTube for free. But somehow she had 50,000 followers who ate up everything she posted. Her content was all boss babe this and create your own reality, that pure toxic positivity. The thing that really got to me was how different the sisters were when Polly wasn't around. Sarah was this down-to-earth, funny person who could talk about real things. She volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends, knew all our neighbors by name, and brought soup to our elderly neighbor Mrs. Johnson whenever she wasn't feeling well. She was just a really good person, you know? But when Polly came around, it was like a switch flipped in Sarah's brain. She would talk differently and use all these strange influencer phrases like, manifest your dreams, and align with your truth. She would get really self-conscious about everything, even the way she dressed. One time, she cried because we didn't have one of those stupid neon signs that say, good vibes only in our living room. At first, I tried to be understanding. I get it. Sibling dynamics can be complicated. Sarah was the youngest of 3. Their brother Tom is cool, though. He's a high school teacher in Chicago. Polly had always been the fun one. While Sarah was getting straight A's in high school, Polly was sneaking out to parties. While Sarah was working her way up in her marketing career, Polly was finding herself in Bali, posting bikini pictures with motivational quotes. The real trouble started about 6 months before all this happened. Polly had just broken up with her latest boyfriend, a crypto bro named Chad. That was his real name. She decided she needed to share her wisdom with Sarah, so she started sending these long texts. Messages about how marriage was a way to limit women's power and how settling down in your 20s was basically giving up on life. At first, Sarah would just laugh it off and show me the messages. We would joke about how silly they were, but then Polly started getting more aggressive. She would send Sarah links to articles about divorce rates and early marriages or tag her in Instagram posts about living your truth and not settling. It was like this constant drip of poison. I remember this one night about 2 we were having dinner with Polly a few months before everything fell apart. She would show up out of the blue, saying she was in the area, even though Miami to Michigan isn't exactly a casual trip. During the meal, she talked about how great her life was. With all the parties, guys, and networking events, more parties. Then she looked at Sarah with a fake concerned look and said, "Don't you miss having adventures, sis? Don't you want more than just this?" She said this while pointing at our apartment. I was so angry about the home we had built together, but Sarah just sat there pushing her food around her plate. She looked like someone had just told her Santa wasn't real. I should have said something then and called Polly out on her manipulative, but I didn't want to cause drama or make Sarah uncomfortable. Plus, I honestly didn't think Sarah would ever buy into Polly's lifestyle. She had always been the sensible one. We had literally spent the weekend before planting our wedding flowers and laughing about how neither of us wanted anything too Instagram-worthy. God, I was so naive. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs. The way Sarah started spending more time on Instagram, how she'd get quiet after her phone calls with Polly, the sudden interest in meditation apps and manifestation journals. It was like watching someone slowly get pulled into a cult, but the cult leader was their own sister. This part is actually pretty hard to write even months later, but you guys deserve the full story, so here goes. We didn't want anything that was too Instagram-worthy. I was so naive. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs. The way Sarah started spending more time on Instagram, how she got quiet after her phone calls with Polly, and her sudden interest in meditation apps and manifestation journals. It was like watching someone slowly get pulled into a cult, but the cult leader was their own sister. This part is actually pretty hard to write even months later, but you guys deserve the full story, so here goes. The weather in Michigan was finally starting to warm up on Tuesday in April. I remember being so happy that I could wear just a light jacket to work. The night before, Sarah and I had stayed up late planning our honeymoon. We were thinking about doing a road trip through the Pacific Northwest, stopping in all these little towns and national parks. She was excited about finding these weird roadside attractions, like the world's largest ball of twine or whatever. Just typical dorky couple stuff, you know? That morning started out so normal. It hurts to think about now. I got up at 6:30 like always, let Mr. Whiskers out of our bedroom. He has this thing about sleeping at our feet, and started making breakfast. It was French toast morning, Sarah's favorite. I'd perfected this recipe over the year. Thick-cut bios bread, lots of cinnamon, a splash of vanilla, and this maple syrup we'd gotten from this tiny farm in Vermont during our last road trip. Sarah came down wearing this blue sweater I'd gotten her for Christmas. She seemed fine, tired maybe, but it was Tuesday morning. Isn't tired we had breakfast together and talked about a show we had started watching the night before. She kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and went to work. I remember thinking about how lucky I was and how perfect everything was. It's funny how life likes to punch you in the gut right when you're feeling on top of the world. Huh? I had a pretty normal day at work. I had a couple of client meetings, grabbed lunch with a coworker, and sent Sarah a few random memes that made me think of her. She left them on read, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. 3 p.m. She texted me to say she was going home early because she wasn't feeling well. I offered to pick up soup from that Vietnamese place she likes, but she said no thanks. I should have known something was wrong then. Sarah never turns down when she's sick. When I got home around 6, the apartment felt wrong. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and can just tell something bad is about to happen? The air was too thick or something. Yeah, it was like that. Sarah was already halfway sitting on our couch. She was drinking a bottle of wine, which she never does unless something is seriously wrong. There was a look in her eyes that I'd never seen before, and she wouldn't look directly at me. Mr. Whiskers, who usually runs to greet me at the door, wasn't there. "We need to talk," she said, and my stomach dropped. No one in the history of relationships has ever said "we need to talk," and then followed it up with "good news." I sat down across from her, still wearing my work clothes and holding my laptop bag like a shield. "What's going on?" I asked even though part of me already knew the signs had been there, I just hadn't wanted to see them. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." She started taking another big sip of wine, about life, about what I want, about everything. She was using these weird hand gestures while she talked, something she'd picked up from Polly, and I don't think I can do this anymore. Do what? I asked like a idiot, as if I didn't know exactly what she meant. "This United States, the wedding, all of it." She waved her hand around our apartment at all the little things we'd collected together over the stupid ceramic penguin we'd found at a thrift store, the photos from our trips, the wedding planning binder sitting on the coffee table. I feel like I'm suffocating. Then came the part that really killed me. She started talking about how she'd been talking to Polly a lot late, how Polly had opened her eyes to what she was missing out on, how she needed to find herself before she could settle down. It was like listening to someone read off a script of every basic breakup cliche, but with Paul's influence or buzzwords mixed in. She kept using phrases like living authentically and aligning with my truth. At one point, she actually said, "I need to understand who Sarah is before I can be Sarah plus someone else." I wanted to scream. "You were Sarah, you're the Sarah who loves true crime, podcasts, and hates cilantro and cries at dog food commercial." But I didn't say any of I just sat there watching 5 years of my life crumble while Sarah talked about personal growth and spiritual journeys like she was reading off Polly's Instagram caption. The worst part was that she had already packed a bag while I was at work thinking about what kind of soup to bring my sick fiancé. She was moving in with Polly for a while to figure things out. Before she left, she took off her engagement ring, which had belonged to my grandmother, and just left it on the coffee table like it was nothing. It was like some piece of costume jewelry she had gotten tired of. After she left, I just sat there for hours staring at that ring. Whiskers finally came out from wherever he'd been hiding and curled up in my lap, purring like he knew I needed it. The French toast dishes from that morning were still in the sink, and her coffee mug, the one with little foxes on it that I'd gotten her for our first Christmas together, was still in the dishwasher. You know what's really That night, while I was sitting there trying to figure out how my whole life had just fallen apart, Sarah was already posting on her Instagram story. It wasn't anything direct, just one of those vague quotes about choosing yourself and starting new chapters. She even used one of those sunset filters, which was very classy. After Sarah left, I went through all the stages of grief in about 48 hours. First came denial. I literally sat on the couch until 4 a.m. I was sure she would come back and say it was all a mistake. Then I got angry and may or may not have thrown her stupid good vibes only coffee mug against the wall. Sorry, not sorry. I was so sad that I called in sick to work for 2 days and basically just sat on the couch with Mr. Whiskers and leftover Chinese food. But then something strange happened. You know how Netflix always asks if you're still watching after you've been binging shows for too long? Well, when I clicked yes for the 100th time, I noticed that Sarah was still logged into our shared account and that there was a show I had never heard of being watched at 2 a.m. At some dude's place. Yeah, let that sink in. My fiancé, who less than a week ago was planning our wedding and honeymoon, was already Netflix and chilling with someone else, and because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment and maybe because I'd had a few beers, I decided to do some digging. First stop Instagram. Sarah's main account was pretty much what you'd expect, lots of inspirational quotes about new beginnings and finding yourself, some pictures of her and Polly at various Miami clubs, the usual post-breakup social media performance. But then I remembered that Sarah had a strange habit of making separate accounts for different things. She had one just for posting about the books she read and another for her cooking attempts. I tried to guess, you know how Instagram suggests people to follow when you make a new account? Well, if you use the same email address for multiple accounts, they're all kind of linked. It took me about 10 minutes to try different combinations of her usual username, but holy __ guys, I found a whole-ass secret Instagram account. The account was private, but she used the same password for everything. Her mom's name and her birth year. I had told her a million times to use a better password. What I found was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Except the car was my relationship and it had been on fire for months without me noticing. The account was full of direct messages between her and Polly going back to January. They had been planning this whole escape from suburban life thing like it was some kind of prison break. Polly would send her long messages about how proud she was of Sarah for finally waking up and choosing freedom. There were also screenshots of conversations with this guy Jake, a finance bro that Polly had introduced her to at a party back in February when Sarah was supposedly visiting her parents. The messages between Sarah and Jake made me physically sick. There was nothing explicitly cheating, but there were lots of what-if conversations and flirty little exchanges. Polly would send her long messages about how proud she was of Sarah for finally waking up and choosing freedom. There were screenshots of conversations with this guy Jake, a finance guy that Polly had introduced her to at a party back in February when Sarah was supposedly visiting her parents. The messages between Sarah and Jake made me sick to my stomach. They weren't cheating, but they were full of what-if conversations and flirty little exchanges. What if we'd met first? What if you weren't engaged? Meanwhile, I'm at home growing tomatoes in our garden and planning surprise date nights like a idiot. But here's the real kicker. All those times Sarah was working late or having girls' night with coworkers in the months before she left, she was actually on video calls with Polly and her Miami friends planning her new fabulous life. They had this whole group chat called Sarah's Liberation where they'd talk about me and our boring life together. You want to know how detailed this planning was? They had a whole spreadsheet, an actual spreadsheet with tabs for everything, clubs to visit, guys to meet. Yeah, Jake wasn't the only one, even a glow-up schedule for Sarah with appointments for hair extensions, nail maintenance, and something called tooth gems. Had to Google that one. Apparently it's like jewelry for your teeth. One conversation from March really stuck with Sarah. Had posted a picture of us at my nephew's birthday party. We were both covered in cake because my 5-year-old nephew Thought it would be hilarious to start a food fight. We were laughing happy, just genuinely enjoying life. Holly commented on it in their private chat. Geez, you look so basic here, can't wait until you're living your best life with us instead of playing house in the suburbs. Sarah's response, just a few more months of pretending, a few more months of pretending. Those words kept echoing in my head while I was planning our future. She was planning her escape while I was looking at houses in good school districts because she'd always talked about wanting kids. She was looking at party dresses and making plans with other guys. The worst war part, there were pictures of her trying on wedding dresses with her mom. Right around the same time, she was messaging Jake about how confused she was about her feeling. Pictures of her crying happy tears in this beautiful white dress captioned, "Can't wait to marry my best friend." Posted the same day she was in Jake's DMs talking about how she felt trapped in our relationship. I found myself going through old photos of us trying to spot the moment where it all changed. Was she in that New Year's picture? She looks at me like I'm her whole world. What about our anniversary dinner in March? The weekend trip to the lake in April? When did my fiancée become such a good actress? The more I dug, the more it felt like I was reading about a stranger. This wasn't the Sarah I knew. The girl who cried at ASPCA commercials and spent 3 hours making a get well card for our elderly neighbor. This was some poly-influenced pod person who talked about vibes and energy and treated our relationship like it was. For about 3 months after Sarah left, I had to watch their whole Miami adventure unfold on social media like some twisted reality. Sarah and Polly were living their best life, all designer outfits, rooftop parties, and fancy restaurant. Every post was tagged with something like number living authentically or number choosing me or my personal favorite number no regrets. Jake was a constant presence in their posts, though they tried to be subtle about it. You know the type, those they thought they were being so clever with accidental group photographs where he's next to Sarah or stories where you can hear his voice in the background. But it was as obvious as a drunk elephant in a china shop. Sarah had fully changed into Polly too. The girl who used to spend Sundays in her pajamas reading true crime books was gone. Now she was all crop tops and hair extensions, posting daily affirmations, and trying to start her own wellness coaching business, which was just selling the same overpriced workout plans as Polly. She even started talking with that weird influencer vocal fry that Polly uses. It was like watching someone have a quarter-life crisis in real time. But then, about 3 months into their fabulous new life, something amazing happened. I was scrolling through Instagram one morning while drinking my coffee and getting ready for another day of pretending to be okay when I saw a post from Polly that would change everything. She was standing on a beach in Malibu, not Miami, in a white bikini and holding up her left hand to show off a huge engagement ring. The caption read, "He asked, and my soul said yes. Ready to start forever with my twin flame." You might be thinking, okay, so Polly got engaged. So what? Well, here's where it gets good. Tech bro Tyler, yes, that was his actual handle, was this Sarah's sister had been secretly dating a startup founder from Seattle for the past 6 months. The best part was that they were moving to Seattle right away. The same sister who had been telling Sarah for months that marriage was a social construct and settling down was basic, had been secretly planning her own wedding the whole time she was convincing Sarah to blow up her life. You really can't make this stuff up. Sarah found out about it the same way everyone else did. Through Instagram, according to my friend Mike, who still Sarah's brother Tom was friends with Polly, and she had a complete meltdown. She called Polly screaming about betrayal and hypocrisy, but Polly just hit her with the same spiritual buzzwords she'd been using on Sarah. "I'm just following my truth and the universe has a plan." But wait, it gets better. Remember Jake, Mr. Perfect, who was supposed to be so much better than boring old me? Well, it turns out Jake had been FNG his truth with about 3 other girls the whole time he was seeing Sarah. One of them found out about the others and made a whole TikTok exposing him. It went semi-viral in their Miami social circle, complete with screenshots. Sarah tried to play it cool online by posting things like, "Everything happens for a reason," and "Trust the journey." But behind the scenes, she was falling apart without Polly there to pay for their lavish lifestyle. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Polly had been paying for most of their partying. Sarah was having a hard time because those wellness coaching plans weren't selling as well as she had hoped. She had to move out of Polly's Miami apartment since Polly had been paying for everything. Was selling it because she couldn't afford the lifestyle she was used to and was basically stuck in a city where she didn't have any real friends. Just a bunch of party acquaintances who disappeared as soon as the free drinks ran out. The final straw was when Sarah posted a long, rambling Instagram story one night, probably after a few too many drinks, about how some people aren't who they say they are and how true sisters don't leave their sisters behind. She tagged Polly in it, and Pierre's response was to block Sarah on everything. Just like that, the whole house of cards fell apart. All of Sarah's inspirational quotes about choosing yourself and living your best life were gone, replaced by vague posts about healing and learning hard lessons. I watched all of this happen from the safety of my couch, usually with Mr. Whiskers on my lap. Was it petty of me to feel satisfaction? Maybe, but after everything they put me through, watching karma do its thing felt really good. I finally started putting myself back together. Going back to the gym turned out to be a great way to get my anger out. I got back into my old hobbies and even finished restoring that vintage record player I'd been working on. I even started to enjoy my own company. Mr. Whiskers and I had our routine down. Morning coffee on the balcony, work, maybe some video games or a book in the evening. It wasn't exciting by Instagram standards, but it was peaceful. That's when I met Emma. No, it wasn't a rom-com moment where we locked eyes across a crowded coffee shop or anything like that. I was at a really boring tax law conference in Chicago, representing my firm and trying not to fall asleep during a presentation about recent changes in retirement account regulation. Someone asked a really smart question about Roth IRA convert, and when I turned around to see who it was, I saw a woman in a perfectly tailored navy suit with smart glasses and a subtle undercut that made her look both professional and badass. During the break, I worked up the courage to talk to her about her yes. I used tax law as a pickup line because I'm a finance nerd. Don't judge me. Emma turned out to be a brilliant tax attorney who could talk about fiscal policy with the same enthusiasm that most people reserve for their favorite TV shows. But here's the thing. She was also really funny. Like actually funny, not just Instagram caption funny. She had this dry wit that could make even the most boring tax regulations sound interesting. We ended up skipping the afternoon sessions and spending hours at this little cafe near. We talked about everything from tax brackets to true crime podcasts at the conference center. Turned out that we both liked the same ones. It was easy, no pretense, no performance. Just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company. When I got back to Michigan, we started texting, then video calling, and then taking turns driving the 3 hours between our cities every other weekend. Emma was different from anyone I'd ever dated. She was ambitious, but not in that fake #girlboss way. She worked hard because she wanted to. She really loved what she did, not because she was trying to prove anything to anyone. The first time she came to my house, she brought her own coffee beans because she's a total coffee snob. She spent the morning teaching me how to use this fancy pour-over method that she swears by. We made a huge mess in my kitchen, but it was the most fun I'd had in months. She didn't even ask why I had a cat tree but no wedding photos on the walls anymore. She just helped me clean up the coffee grounds and suggested we try making French toast next. Orange zest because apparently she's a breakfast perfectionist too. That's why when Sarah showed up at my door one rainy night in October, I wasn't even angry anymore, just tired. She looked exactly like you'd expect someone who just had their perfect life imploded to look. Mascara running, hair a mess, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Can we talk? She asked, voice shaking. Classic Sarah timing. She'd probably seen my recent Instagram post with Emma at my cousin's wedding and decided now was the time. To have a heart-to-heart, I let her in because I'm not a complete jerk. Mr. Whiskers took one look at her and ran into the bedroom. Cats really do have the best judgment, don't they? She sat on the new couch I bought to replace the one we picked out together and started crying. What followed was the most predictable conversation ever. How she'd made a huge mistake. How Polly had manipulated her. How Jake was a player. Shocking, I know. How she missed our life together. And how she'd been doing a lot of thinking and realized what she'd thrown away. The old me would have eaten this up and thought it was a sign that everything could go back to normal. But as I sat there listening to her talk, all I could think about was how Emma and I had SP the weekend before, building this silly blanket fort in my living room because it was raining and we were bored. We had real talks about our future, not just Instagram-worthy moments. I think we could try again, Sarah said, finally looking at me with those green eyes. Used to make my heart skip a beat. I'm different now. I know what I want. That's when I got up, walked to my phone that was charging on the kitchen counter, and pulled up the photo from my cousin's wedding. It was a candid shot of Emma, and me laughing at something my drunk uncle had said. Emma's head was thrown back in genuine laughter, her hand on my chest. While I looked at her like she was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen, I showed it to Sarah. I'm different now. 2, I said quietly, and I know what I want. The look on her face, it was like watching someone finally get that some things can't be fixed with a carefully crafted apology and an Instagram-worthy reconciliation moment. She started crying again. But this time I didn't feel the need to comfort her. You should go, I said, not unkindly. It's getting late and Emma's coming over for breakfast tomorrow. She's teaching me how to make croissants from scratch. As Sarah walked to the door, she paused and turned around. Are you happy? She asked, as if she couldn't believe it was possible to be happy without her. I told Emma about our dumb coffee experiments and blanket forts, and how she sends me terrible puns in the middle of work days and actually listens when I geek out about financial regulations. I said I really am. After she left, I texted Emma, "You won't believe who just showed up." Her response was perfect. "Do we need to make stress croissants tonight instead of waiting for morning? I can be there in 3 hours with emergency butter." That's when I knew for sure that sometimes the worst things that happen to you lead to the best things in your life. You to the best things in your life.